All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. Okay, let's get going. Before we begin, I have a small announcement. La Fundación Cotec is going to be doing a workshop in La Torre at 5 o'clock. It's called Reiniciar la Universidad. Fundación Cotec. Workshop at 5 o'clock if you're interested, and you can sign up on your app. All right. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. I just came from a discussion on AI, artificial intelligence. And there's one thing that AI is not going to be able to do in the future is raise successful people. That is a hard job. And who better to speak about it than Esther Wojcicki, a leading American educator, blended learning expert, founder of the Media Arts program at Palo Alto High Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Esther.
No water? You don't want to kill me before I get out there. Hello, thank you.
Come right up here.
This clicker. Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to be here. I can tell you I've been in Spain. Last time I was here was, my first time I was here, I was 30 years ago. Probably most of you weren't even alive. And then 20 years ago, and now 10 years, every 10 years it seems that I can tell you it dramatically changed, and it's for the better. I've just loved it so far in Madrid. So my goal is to tell you how to raise successful people, but just after my talk this afternoon, actually upstairs on La Nave, I realized that the talk should really be called How to Raise Talent for the 21st Century. How to have as much talent as we need for the 21st century. And right now, we don't have it. So these are really simple lessons for radical results. Simple because they're really easy to do, but don't be deceived. Don't think just because they're so simple they don't work. I've tried this for years, and I have experience doing it. I have the largest media program in the United States, and it's called Palo Alto High School Media Arts. There's over 700 students taking media. So we'll start with learning has changed for the 21st century. How do we learn today? Everybody learns on their phone. When's the last time you went to the library? Everybody learns from their phone, but in fact, the system remains the same. We're still teaching the same way that we did 50 years ago and 100 years ago before there was any internet. And we're still training students for the same skills that we did before, which is basically how to read, how to write, how to do math, and how to follow instructions. But our needs have changed. This is what a typical classroom looks like. Notice that all the kids are interacting with the teacher. You raise your hand, you're recognized by the teacher, that you say something, the next person raises their hand, recognized by the teacher. The interaction between students is minimal. So should students spend more time in school and have more tests? How are we going to try to improve education in Spain, in the world, everywhere? What are we going to do? Should they spend more time in school? So Spain, just to localize it here, has more class time than the EU average, 893 hours in class, and the OECD average is 910. They have more time in school, but unfortunately, More class time has not resulted in better test scores or better outcomes or more talent for the people that need to hire the talent. And why is that? Well, in fact, more class time does not guarantee a better education. That's according to Andreas Schlechter, the head of the PISA tests. He's going to be here, or he's already here, or I don't know, he's coming. So you probably want to hear from him. He's the head of it. And so it does not result in a better education. Just because you spend more time in school, that's not a guarantee. So what happens in class is what matters. What the students are doing in that class time is how you're going to improve the education. So PISA warns that Spain won't improve its academic performance until students spend more time on finding their own solutions to problems and less time on memorizing. So we're all memorizing, not only here in Spain, but in France and in Germany. Everywhere we're memorizing, but to different degrees. There is less memorizing in some countries. In parts of the United States, there's less memorizing. But why are we memorizing? All memorizing to pass the tests. And the question is memorizing learning? Do you learn when you memorize? The statistics say that even if you got 100% on a test, 2 weeks after that test, you only remember 32%. So is that learning? That's the question. What are we doing by forcing memorization? So we're still preparing students for the last century when memorization was an important skill. So when I was going to school, there were no computers. There was no portable phone. If I didn't memorize, I couldn't do anything. And if I didn't know how to use the library in the Dewey Decimal System, I couldn't do anything. But today, I have in my pocket a little encyclopedia. We have our phone. Every single one of us has a phone in a pocket. And what you need to know is how to use that phone intelligently. We need to change the culture of the classroom. And it's really hard to change the culture. So here's something interesting for you to know. There's 2 institutions that are very resistant to change. One of them is the school. Why? The purpose of the school is to perpetuate culture. So it's hard to change it. The second institution that is very hard to change, I wonder how many of you could guess. Anybody can guess what it is, the second institution that's impossible to change? Don't see any volunteers. The church. That's right. The church is never going to change. So those are 2 institutions that are really impossible to change. People try, but it doesn't work. So the PISA test, that's the one everybody uses to compare one country to another, like which country is doing the best. By the way, it's Finland and Singapore. Which countries are doing the poorest? So the PISA test, critical thinking in math, science, and reading, it does not measure memorization of facts. So when we're memorizing facts, we're wasting our time. It measures real-world problem solving. The question is, are we teaching that in school? Probably just think about what your children are doing, grandchildren, what you did. Did you have real-world problem-solving opportunities? So we have too much emphasis on following the rules, and by the way, this is what it looks like. You know, we have a lot of cute people. Okay, maybe they aren't sheep, but they're cute. So this is what Einstein said: we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So we need to figure out how we're going to solve our problems. Number 1 problem facing our planet, and I'm sure you can probably all know what it is that I'm going to say, is global climate change is a problem. How are we going to solve these problems? How are we going to solve this problem if we don't all work together? So the top 10 skills that all employers want, this is what they're all looking for. Top 10 skills. Number 1, complex problem solving of real world problems. Number 2, critical thinking. Number 3, creativity. So I want to know, can you learn to be creative by listening to a lecture about it? Or can you learn to be creative by watching me do something creative? How do you learn to be creative? In fact, how do you learn to be a critical thinker? Experience in the classroom. You have to have experience. Why do I say the classroom? Because the average child spends the majority of their waking time in the classroom. It's 8 hours a day. So let's make that time worthwhile for them. Experience is truly the greatest teacher. So this is my suggestion to change the schools, because what we said is schools are really hard to change. They don't want to change, but they're willing to change a little. They know they need to change. We all know they need to change. So my suggestion is, how about changing just 20% of the time? Just 20%. 80% of the time, direct instruction, normal curriculum, normal teaching methods. 80% of the time, you get to do the same thing. It's just 20% of the time can be devoted to what we can call moonshot time, or 20% time, or genius time. I don't care what we call it. It's a time for students to do things that they come up with. It's called student-directed learning. By the way, Google was one of the first companies on the planet to have what they call 20% time. So their employees, they get to work for 20% time on a project that they think will make the world better. Any project. And some of the projects that have come out of 20% time at Google, one of them many of you know, it's called Gmail. Gmail was a 20% project somebody thought of. So 20% time can work in the schools. Kids are happy to do 80% of the time things that other people tell them to do if they can have just a little bit of time to do something they want to do. So student-directed learning can come from all kinds of sources. You don't have to invent it. Creative Commons is the open web. Coursera. A lot of people go on Coursera and never finish the courses. As a matter of fact, 95% of them drop out. But they don't drop out if they're working together in teams. And this provides resources. The teacher doesn't have to teach it. Kids can come on that website, or Khan Academy, or MIT OpenCourseWare, any of those themselves. The number one site that gets the most hits for learning is YouTube. More people use YouTube to learn than any other site in the world. It gets 1 billion hits a day. Yep, a lot. So there's so many opportunities to make the world a better place. Well, who do we need to help us make the world a better place? Young entrepreneurs. These are the people that we should be giving an opportunity in school. They come up with all kinds of exciting ideas. Let them try them out. Creativity is something that we need to encourage. Here's an example of something that you probably don't know about, because none of us were around in 1868. The Salon in Paris. This was a place to exhibit the best art of the time, the best art. And so there was a group of young people who wanted to exhibit their art, and they were denied. And they begged and begged and begged, and they finally got in. And this is one of the artists. Anybody know who this is? This is Renoir. And this is the other one, Monet. Plus there were 10 others, including Van Gogh. They were all rejected. They were sent to the trash bin. Why? Independent thinkers often don't follow the rules, and then they're not rewarded. You know, we need independent thinkers. How's this? Independent thinkers are the people that make the change and improve the world. So still, as I said, our worldwide focus is on memorization. We need to change that focus. Here's what Sir Ken Robinson said, the #1 TED Talk in the world: if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. What does our education system reward? You have to be right all the time. So Steve Jobs, think different. I actually met Steve Jobs years ago. His daughter was in my class, so he used to come and actually hang out in the classroom. He was a parent that just showed up whenever he felt like showing up, and he would just sit on the floor and watch. I remember hearing about this idea of having a phone in your pocket, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, what is coming next? But that was, of course, his idea. He had the grit, the vision to follow his dreams. So what are the characteristics of successful people? #1 characteristics of successful people, we'll just wait and see here. People who feel empowered to follow their dreams. Just think about that for a minute. If you feel empowered to follow your dreams, you are going to be a much happier person. I don't care what your dreams are, but if you feel somehow that you have a purpose and a passion and you can follow those dreams, it makes a huge difference. Another characteristic of people who are successful, people who think different. Independence and experience in the classroom equals creativity. And that's what you want, is creativity. So Stanford University is the hotbed of creativity and independent thinking in Silicon Valley, and look at what they say. We believe everyone has the capacity to be creative. Everyone. And I agree, everyone. Stanford D School is a place where students use design to develop their own potential. Stanford accepts students today based on creativity, based on independent thinking, based on kindness. This is actually really important for everyone to know. So this guy, I bet about a lot of you know him. This is James Franco. He's a famous actor. He was my student. And when he was in the 10th and 11th grade, he was exceptionally good at math. His father was a mathematician. Guess what the family thought James would be? A mathematician, right? He worked at NASA even. But James decided that in the 12th grade, he did not want to be a mathematician. He wanted to be an actor. So you as parents, how excited would you be if your child decided he wanted to be an actor instead of a mathematician? So just think about that. So one thing, and he wrote the introduction to my first book, and this is what he said in the introduction. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. So everybody needs somebody in their life, and usually it's best if they're a teacher or a mentor who believes in them and can support them in their dreams. So people who believe in themselves are people that are successful. You might want to just think about that again. You have to believe in yourself in order to pursue something with grit. You can't pursue it unless you believe in yourself. People who are not worried about what others think. So this is a bestseller in the United States. Guess why it's a bestseller? Because everybody's worried about what everybody else thinks, and they're trying to figure out how to stop worrying. We're looking around constantly at what everybody's thinking. This is a professor at Harvard School of Education. His message is similar. He says that basically, dark horses are people who follow their dreams, and their dreams are passion and fulfillment, not necessarily big titles and lots of money. Whatever it is that you want makes the difference. This is Ray Dalio. He's a very famous hedge fund guy. I think he's the largest in the world. He says in this book, called Principles by Ray Dalio, I can tell you the whole book so you don't have to read it. A purpose in life, that's it. And he says, doing things that matter to you is what matters. So the golden ticket money can't buy is purpose. You want to have a sense of control at least 51% of the time. Why do I say 51? Nobody has a sense of control all the time. It's impossible. But if the majority of time you have some control, I think you'll be pretty happy. You want to have successful relationships. That is one of the keys. And so last night I had the opportunity to meet a very interesting guy. His name is Richard Vaughn. He has a school here in Spain that he teaches English. I don't know how many of you have heard of this Vaughn School where you can learn English. I'll tell you, it's amazing. How many of you heard of this school, Vaughn School? Well, he's got more books, television, radio, everything. He's incredible. I was so excited to meet him. He told me, he said, the most important thing and the most successful way that he gets students to learn English is hire teachers that care. Teachers are the key, according to him. And he looks for two things in the teachers. Humility is number one, empathy is number two. Those are the two things he looks for. It ties in 100% to what I'm going to be telling you, because relationships, and he's right, a student who likes the teacher and a teacher who can connect to the student will make that student want to learn. Here it is, the three most important things in education. The three. Number one, relationships. Number two, relationships. And number three, relationships. Sure, you've heard this for real estate, right? Three most important things in real estate: location, location, and location. So this is the same thing only for education. The relationship between the teacher and the students, and the teacher and the students and the students. You want to feel like you're part of a community. You want to feel excited about going to school. That's what I'm saying. My suggestions are really simple. They're not complex. So how do we teach this? So I have a book that's coming out in Spanish on the 14th of November. It's in English now, How to Raise Successful People. So one of the covers is the UK edition, which is available here. The other cover is the US edition with the people jumping on it. And the third one is the one in Spanish coming out in November. They all say this pretty much the same thing. And I just have those three covers so you know what it is. The first edition that came out on May 7th sold out in 2 weeks in the US, the first printing. So then we had to hunt around for more paper to print it. By the way, there's a shortage of paper these days. It's not clear 100% why. So in that book, I talk about TRIC, and that was on my very first slide. And TRIC stands for these 5 things, and I just want you to remember. This is how to make every single teacher in every single classroom into a superstar teacher. What I'm trying to do is empower teachers. Trust, they have to have trust themselves, trust the students. Respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And it all adds up to TRIC. And this is like the key to the same thing that Richard Vaughn is talking about. You want a teacher who is going to be able to engender some kind of respect and caring for the students. So it's Trick again, trust, respect, independence, collaboration, kindness. I say it starts in childhood. It starts with the parents. 0 to 5 are the most important years. Why? 85% of the brain capacity is developed in the first 5 years. If you do not know that, it's important for you to know. What you're doing with your child in the first 5 years is critical. So this book is targeting parents, it's targeting teachers, and it's targeting the corporate world, all three, because it's the same methodology in all three. So I thought I would just tell you who my first guinea pigs were, because, you know, everybody has to try stuff out. And I've been doing this, well, since my first child was born, 1968. And this is Susan in the middle, Janet the second one, and Anne the third one. And so I tried out all these methods on them, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, all this stuff. You know, some of them worked. Thank God most of them worked. Some of them did not work. There was a little bit of chaos in my house, but anyway. So for those of you who do not know, I'll show you who they are today. This is what they look like today. The one in the middle is Susan, and Susan is the CEO of YouTube. The second one on this side is Anne, and Anne is the founder and the CEO of 23andMe. And the third one is Janet. She's the one wearing the jacket, and she is a professor of pediatrics at UCSF Medical Center, focused on the obesity epidemic. So the fact that they felt empowered to follow their dreams and do what matters to them, and in today's world, it is not an easy path, as you know. And that is one of the reasons I think that they were able to succeed in the tech world and to succeed in the academic world, is because they've had the grit and the sense that they can do it, which is what I'm trying to give all students in my classes. Trust and belief in yourself, respecting yourself. That is one thing that a lot of people have trouble with. They don't trust themselves, they don't believe themselves, and most of all, they don't forgive themselves when they make a mistake, which is they should forgive themselves. Trust your child and they will believe in themselves. That's just the simple principle. So a 19-year study reveals kindergarten students with these two skills are twice as likely to obtain a college degree, and they have nothing to do with reading. Here it is. Social emotional skills. So this is, again, believing in yourself, trusting yourself, working on things that you care about. So my suggestion is let kids problem solve, let them explore, or encourage peer-to-peer learning. It's not as fast, but it works more effectively. Kids learn the most from each other. All educational research shows that the most effective teacher for a student is other students in the class, peer-to-peer. So let's do that in the college level, let's do that high school level, let's do that in elementary level. Let's do that at home. Cut down on the competition. Stop comparing them to the kid next door. All the parents, I don't know what it's like here in Spain, but in the US, everybody's comparing everything. Oh, does your kid know how to read yet? He's only 3. Or, you know, the most searched thing is about toilet training. Everybody wants to know if their kid is toilet trained and the kid next door seems to have done it faster. So in fact, I bet none of you have asked each other when you were toilet trained. So what difference does it make? You know, if we could stop comparing our kids one to the other. Cut down on the memorizing. Teachers teach to the set test. So maybe we should cut down on that. Sir Ken Robinson says, again, we stigmatize mistakes, and we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is we're educating people out of their creative capacities. So one thing, we can change the test. Okay, Andreas Schlechter is coming tomorrow. Maybe you can ask him about that. How can we change the test? How can we stop teaching things that require memorization? We need to respect all teachers. Do we respect all teachers? We have a lot of problem worldwide respecting teachers. In Finland they do, and it makes a huge difference. So this is one of the things that really matters a lot. This is what I do in my classroom, and this is what people that's recommended. We have a mastery system of learning as opposed to the typical system of learning. You get a grade only when you master it, not when you are first trying. So if it takes you 3 times to write an essay and revise it, you get the grade at the end, which is the A. If it takes the same thing in math, how long does it take you to learn the concepts? Keep doing it until you get it. The mastery system of learning cuts down on the pressure. There's 2 groups that are working on it. Mastery Connect, which is part of Instructure, which is a big company in the United States, and Mastery Transcript Consortium, also working on it. So helicopter parenting, the reason most parents are helicopter parents is they have fear of making mistakes. However, I've heard here in Spain, helicopter parenting is much reduced. In the United States, it's an epidemic. It's a real problem. And kids lack control and purpose. They become depressed because the parents are trying to clear the way. Another way to call it is snowplow parents. They clear the path. So this is from The Guardian. John Marsden said, worldwide, on toxic parenting, I've never seen this level of anxiety. So many parents are like freaked out because they don't know what to do with their kids. They think it's their responsibility as opposed to the child's responsibility. All this is in my book, by the way. This is the American Psychological Association. These are statistics in the US. They're pretty grim. 84% of students feel unable to cope. Why? Because the parents have been doing everything for them beforehand. And so they go off to college and they feel incapable of handling their own problems. It makes sense. The more parents and teachers control the kids, the less empowered they will feel. The more fearful they are of making mistakes. This is another very sad statistic. Suicide rates among US youth at the highest point since 2000. So this is the big fish, little pond theory that I promote. It's in Malcolm Gladwell's book. Chapter 3, better to be a big fish in a little pond than be a little fish in a big pond. Because your self-esteem is better when you're a big fish in a little pond and when you feel better about yourself. As I said earlier, it's really important for you to feel as empowered as possible. So statistics from Stanford proves this to be true. Big fish, little pond theory. Little ponds tend to be more welcoming. They offer more support, a greater sense of community. So this is also from the New York Times. We have ruined childhood, and that's because we're all so obsessed with being right. So how's this? This is what is going on in many places. This is the #1 babysitter. Your child is crying. What do? You give them an iPad, you give them a phone. Why is that a bad idea? That's a bad idea because from 0 to 5, you are training children to live in the world. And if you think that the world, every time you are bored, means reaching for an electronic device, and that's what you're going to be doing, how does that interfere with creativity? It's 100%. Because if you are bored, you are creative. If you are not bored and you reach for an electronic device, your creativity is pretty much over. So what are you doing? You're training your child at a very crucial stage out of their creative capacities. So I'm going to give you an example now, positive example. This is my classroom. This is what I do. I use this model everywhere. If you look at the back of the picture, you'll see me back there. This is what it looks like, a real-world example. I use journalism. I could use math. I could use social studies. I could use English. I've taught all those subjects with the same methodology. I just happen to be teaching journalism now because I'm basically trained as a journalist to start. So in this media arts program, we have 700 students, 10 publications, newspaper, magazine, websites, television, radio, video production, graphic design. This is a public school. This is not a private school. I always have to say that now because people always think it's private. There's now 6 media art teachers. It's the largest in the US. This is what it looks like, 25,000 square foot media arts center. It was built 4 years ago. Before that, for 30 years, I was in this building, a portable. So portables, by the way, mean it's a temporary building. It lasted 30 years. So anyway, this is what the classes look like. Trust, notice there's no lecture base here. This is also what the class looks like. This is what the furniture looks like. Notice it's movable. In most universities, the furniture is not movable and it's all lecture-based. So you have to think about how you can do that. Here is more. This is a typical class period. This is another class period. These are just different kids in different locations in the school. And notice they all look like it's a workplace. And that's what schools should look like. This is what they produce. This comes out every 2 to 3 weeks. It's a full-size newspaper produced by 15 to 18-year-olds. And it runs 24 to 28 pages, 3 sections, news section, arts and entertainment section, and sports section. And so why do I do this? I'm not trying to train a whole bunch of journalists. I'm trying to train people with 21st century skills. I'm trying to train the talent that everybody wants to hire. They have skills, internet skills, they have all the interaction, cooperation skills, independent skills. They've got all the skills that everybody wants in their employees. This is an example of a 2-page spread that they made about divorce, because in the US we have a 50% divorce rate. This is a magazine, one of the magazines. Again, they look professional, but I'm telling you, they're just kids. You saw pictures of them. They're the ones that do this. They come up with their own ideas. They come up with their own page count. They do everything. Another magazine that's Verde, which is actually, they named it after quite a bit of disputing. This is a sports magazine. And it's like 60 to 80 pages of sports, and the main sports that they cover are high school sports. So you can imagine how excited all the kids who are playing in the sports feel about this. They're like, love to be covered in the publication, and of course the parents, everybody loves it. So they get the top awards in the US. They've won more gold crowns than any United States school. Who pays for it? All self-supporting. Why? Because I'm training them with entrepreneurial skills. They've got to pay the bills. They don't get enough advertising, they can't publish that number of pages. And how do they sell advertising? Just like you do. It's tough. They get rejected 80% of the time. They come back and say, oh my God, I don't want to do that anymore. It's so hard, everybody says no. It's like, hey, you're getting trained for the real world. It's perfect. That's exactly what happens. So the peer pressure keeps them motivated. They own and they control the publication. In all the years I've been there, they have never once not published. Never. So they always raise the money and they always do it. It's real world learning. They're learning and practicing trick every day. Here's just one example. This is Steve Jobs' daughter. She wrote this book called Small Fry. I don't know if you've heard about it. It was pretty controversial because she tells the truth from her perspective about her dad. This is, again, James Franco. He was in Eat, Pray, Love, 127 Hours. the interview in Spider-Man, and this again is what he said, which I think is really important, which is why it's twice in this publication. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. Every student should have that, be able to make that statement. They need somebody in their life who believes in them. So what can you do now? Implement policies that support 20% time. That 20% time gives kids hope. Just think, 5 days a week you work and you might not like the job, but on the weekend you have hope, right? You get to go out and do something else. Let them have 20% time in school. Change the education policies. Start small. Make little changes each day, because it's hard to make big changes. Trick. Have them do a little trust, a little respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. Makes a huge difference. So right now, it's always sit, stay, did they put it back up? Sit, stay, heal, never think, innovate, and be yourself. So can we make sure that we are not doing these bad things to our kids? So I'm also doing something else I just started. This woman, a friend of mine who was the head of Microsoft in Canada, communications, wrote a book called The Greenhouse Approach, which is targeting entrepreneurs. And so we're joining together to put this together. So we're going to try to help companies do this as well. Not just schools, not just parents, but companies. Because how you treat your employees is the quality of the product you're going to get at the end, whether it's a service product or something you hold in your hand or something that you need in your house. So let's improve the whole world in some way. Education, parenting, corporate world. Thank you very much.
Hey, why don't we go? A taste when the rain came down in the hollow, playing a new game, laughing and running, hey, hey, skipping on the jumping, in the mist in my heart and far with our hearts are thumping you, a pearl like you. 'Cause you're my heart, all I go. And whatever happened, you saying so, going down the old man with the transistor radio, skipping in the sunlight, laughing on rainbows warm, sipping and standing alone, what I fall with you.
All right, moving right along. All right, let's get going. We have a very exciting lineup for this afternoon. Okay, our next panel is going to talk about Revolution 4.0, challenges for education, productivity, and employment. We have 4 guests: Orlando Ayala, who spent 35 years in technology, 25 of those at Microsoft, and now is a special advisor to the President of Colombia on productivity and employment. We have also with us Claudia Costin, who's director and founder of CEIPE, which is a foundation in Brazil at the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. It's a think tank at the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. We also have Montserrat Gomendio. She's head of the OECD Center for Skills. And finally, Stella Campos is the career editor at Valor Económico. And this panel is going to be moderated by Stella Campos. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Revolution 4.0.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon for all. Well, I think I can start this panel telling you a little story. Since Oxford University in 2013 report estimating that 47% of jobs at US were at risk of automation, and they listed 70 occupations that could be replaced. I think the future of jobs become one of the most studied topics all over the world. Everyone heard something about the future of jobs. This year, the World Economic Forum estimated that 75 million jobs may disappear by 2022 as companies shift to automation. But they say 133 million of jobs might be created. Jobs that comes from integration from machines and humans. So, as we know, technology is advancing fast, so we have robots, artificial intelligence and all this. And the big question is, are we preparing workers, upskilling and reskilling to face these times of changing? Is the education system responding to these new demands of the labor market? And what is the role of governments, companies, and society not to leave millions of workers behind? So to address important issues and the views to these hot topics, we have this excellent panel with very prestigious people. I would like to introduce a little bit more of these people for you to know. I'll start. Montserrat Gomendio, she is from OECD, Center for Skills. She also works to support the Secretary General's strategic orientation in the area of skills with the aim to help countries strengthen employability, social participation, and inclusiveness. She was Secretary of State of Education, vocal training, and at universities at Spanish Ministry of Education. And by the way, she is studied management program, but she also have a PhD in behavioral ecology, and she has formed in biology. So a very interesting profile. And Claudia Costin, she's Brazilian, just like me, and she was the founder and director of the Center of Excellence in Innovation Education Policies, a think tank she started at Getúlio Vargas Foundation, which is a leading private university in Brazil, where she teaches. And she was recently a visiting scholar at Harvard Graduate School of Education. And she was a senior director for global education in the World Bank. And also, she has a very tough mission. She worked as a Secretary of Education, the municipality of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And also, just to finish, there's lots of things. She's dedicated, she was in the Global Commissioner with the topic, the future of work from the International Labor Organization. Thank you, Claudia. And Orlando Ayala is, advisor from President of Colombia, as he said, but he has more than 32 years in IT industry. So he has more than 20 years at Microsoft, and where he was vice president for emerging markets, and where he helped federal, provincial, and local governments, I guess, to develop the digital infrastructure, educational programs, human resources needed to turn their particular capabilities into international competitive advantage. Is it correct? And so he is that very close team from Bill Gates, no? Yeah, the leading team from Microsoft. So you're all welcome. Well, I think the big question, as I was telling, that we can start this conversation, is are we really preparing the workforce and with this, the people with the skill set we'll need for the labor market of the future? Who wants to start? Well,
Shall I start?
Montserrat.
So what we know is that in most countries, the technology is having a big impact on labor markets. Now, the estimates that we have at the OECD are a bit more optimistic than the one you gave. So our estimates show that 14% of the jobs, on average, there are huge differences between countries, are at risk of being fully automated, so they would disappear. But another 32% will be profoundly transformed because the tasks that only require routine, low skills will become automated. So those jobs will not disappear, but they will become much more demanding. What does this mean in terms of the demand for skills? It means that people will need much higher levels of skills in order to get a job, and they will need a new set of skills, skills like complex problem solving and critical thinking, which was shown in the previous presentation. Teamwork, creativity, adaptability, and so on are becoming increasingly important. And then finally, also a major implication is that traditional education systems need to evolve into lifelong learning systems. By this, we use a really broad definition, starting with early childhood education and care, going through compulsory education, tertiary, all the way to adult learning. So the whole system needs to be redesigned so that people are really prepared to continue learning throughout their lives so that they can adapt. If their jobs disappear, they can upskill and move to a safer job. If the job is experiencing a profound transformation, they have to avoid being displaced from that job, so they will also need to upskill and reskill throughout their lives.
So when we think about companies, what the whole of the companies in upskilling, reskilling the workforce, if they're more automated, there would be time for workers to learn more, or that's not?
Well, if you allow me, let me just make a reflection about this. I think the real challenge goes way beyond reskilling workers. I think it does because I am convinced the world is living one of the most challenging times in the history of humans. For the first time, there's 3 vectors that are converging in a massive way. And I say that because I think the question comes more with how do we educate the workers of the future, and how we educate basically those workers that are going to create jobs in the future. But I'll say 3 things converging massively. Number 1, a tech convergence of the scale, speed, and impact we have never seen before. And we heard a lot of this morning. This is in the context of also the largest divergence of geopolitical and economic models in the world. We are close, in my opinion, to a breaking point in many places because the known world that was sitting on globalization, connected supply chains, is basically being changed dramatically. So those 2, lots of convergence in technology, a lot of divergence in socioeconomic and political ones. And then the third one, and I'll answer the question, has to do with a lot of phenomena on demographics. A lot of aging, that brings a whole set of challenges itself. There is a lot of challenges with a new generation, with different type of expectations. And most of all, on demographics, one thing that I think is the biggest challenge is, I believe, the ethical construct of the world is challenged right now, and it's going to be challenged to the core. Why? Because basically, we are not anymore 7 billion people. I think we are at least, right now, 11 billion people. Why? Because every one of us, every day, has a parallel eye that is digital. This morning, that parallel eye that is digital has been producing information, and today, you have no control of that digital eye, which is your parallel next door to that. So forgive me for starting right there, because I think the challenge is a lot deeper in the context of how we think about these challenges of educating at a time where all these trends are converging in a real bad time. Not to say on the demographic side, I am very concerned about that. There's a big movement, basically, of people from rural areas to the cities. The cities cannot take more people anymore. There's not enough jobs to do that. So I just wanted to answer that way, and we can go back to the specifics of the companies, what they need to do. But I would say, first and foremost, the biggest education challenge is broad, not only for people, it's for politicians and everybody else, and it goes around how we think about a new ethical society around this technology convergence.
So, Claudia, would you address something, the government policies about education? What is the challenge? Do you see the companies, the governments in education right now?
Okay, if I start with the developing world perspective, or let me be even more specific about Latin America. There are two challenges linked to what Orlando has just said. One is the fact that in Latin America, learning is not happening. For the 20th century, I'm not talking about the 21st, kids are not learning to read and write properly. We are not able to read newspapers and extract information as we should. Colombia has improved recently, but still has a long way to go. In PISA ranking, we are at the bottom third of the ranking. And we will need to develop the skills needed for the 21st. At the same time, the world won't wait for Latin America to first do the 20th century skills and then later, when we are ready to develop digital education and the other skills that we need for the future. So this is a challenge, but it could be also an opportunity. Because if we develop a sense of urgency, and we create contemporary curricula that deals with what differentiate us from quote-unquote robots, we can take advantage of the time as long as we do the hard work of educating every child. Because what will happen with the children that don't get the skills needed is that they, first, there won't be jobs for people that have just very low-level skills. And if they do, inequality will even grow bigger and bigger. That's what everything is projecting for, everybody is projecting for the future. So we will have to do the two things together. And yes, critical thinking, as Montserrat had said, is very important to teach them critical thinking, to teach them learning to learn, as the Minister of Spain had mentioned this morning. Learning to learn has become really urgent because young people in the future will have to reinvent themselves in successive ways, because it's not that all jobs, present jobs, will be destructed all at once. They will be destructed in successive waves, while other jobs will be created. And transition problems will happen. So kids now will have to learn to be able to reinvent themselves. And to finalize my first comments, is that it's also urgent to make humanities important again. Because robots, as far as we know, at least till the next 20 years, are not able as yet to think systemically, to understand what makes us human, to develop empathy, and even to have a creative, to solve problems creatively and collaboratively. And we need the human face there, and our kids needs to be ready for this future.
Montserrat, As OECD has a lot of studies about, are some countries more prepared than others to face these challenges of digitalization?
Well, absolutely, because there are two major differences between countries. I think the main one is what is the level of skills of the population today, and how inclusive that is. So how widespread is it that people have high or low levels of skills? And there we see huge differences between countries. Some countries have really high levels of skills. They're also very inclusive, so most of the population have those levels of skills. Other countries or regions, you mentioned Latin America, have, in comparison, a very low level of skills. So they are ill-prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. But if I may add, one of the other questions that we've asked is, okay, so technology is creating these challenges and this disruption. To what extent can technology itself help us solve this by helping the education system and the lifelong learning system and so on? So our data are not exactly what we expected. We see that in many countries, governments have made a huge effort to buy laptops or other devices and send them to the classrooms. When we look at whether this has an impact on student outcomes, student performance in PISA, for example, it does, but it has a negative impact. And the reason is that they have only concentrated on buying the devices. They have not done enough teacher training. So the teachers are not ready to know how to incorporate the technology into the classroom, because we do have many examples of schools and countries where when teachers are really trained to introduce the technology into their teaching practices, student outcomes do improve. But so far, they are exceptions. If you look at adults, adult learning, and you look at the use of online sources such as MOOCs and so on, there what we see is, again, not what we expected. We expected technology to be able to make the system more inclusive. And what we see is that it's creating a huge divide. So highly skilled people use all the resources available online or wherever to continuously upskill so that they acquire higher and higher levels of skills. All countries have a major issue with low-skilled people who do not have the motivation to engage in any form of learning, including MOOCs and other online resources. So this is really creating a big gap between the highly skilled and the low skilled that we really need to address.
For example, the MOOCs that are very popular, most of the users are young, employed, and very qualified young people, so not many adults, that ones that are going to be off the market, are using them. So do you think what are your experience bringing the technology to other countries as a way of education?
Yeah, I believe that never before the way to learn and educate has been challenged, especially with one technology that is coming up in a massive way, and it's artificial intelligence.
Yes.
We need to understand the implications of that way beyond of how you consume content today. The reality is that in previous revolutions, people that were displaced were mostly people in manual laborers. What is coming is that the biggest missile to attack the jobs in place today is an algorithm. And algorithms today are basically designed to replace almost instantaneously what white-collar workers do, which is take information, process the information, and make decisions. Well, algorithms are incredibly strong in doing that capability. So I have introduced that concept because I do believe that we should not look just at how people is consuming today content, but think about how artificial intelligence is being used. This morning, Ferguson talked about China. The biggest experiment in transformation, how you consume content, is happening right now in China. And it's basically, if you allow me, in four spaces where it's being transformed. In-class training, test and grading, in-class training, second, homework and drills, third, test and grading, and four, custom tutoring. Why I say those are the 4 spaces? Because what happens is this technology that is coming up that has the capability to listen, learn, even smell, in-class training could be actually as effective as somebody or a machine looking how a student is reacting to what is being presented by the teacher and automatically putting his profile just by his reaction if this kid is understanding or not understanding. So imagine the implications of that, not only on how people consume content, then go to basically homework and drills. You take the in-class, then you take artificial intelligence to basically tailor the content for the student and basically test the student in-house trying to do it and then suggest ways to correct it. So my answer to that one is I think that countries that are just looking at the current ways of producing content and the current ways of just consuming content are going to be left behind. This artificial intelligence capability is very close to have really the power to teach and communicate in a more effective way.
Well, I would like, now you're talking about teaching. We have to talk about the teachers.
Yes.
Are we preparing the teachers for 20th century? We see in developing countries like our country, for example, Brazil, we have a difficult, it's a difficult career to convince someone to become a teacher because they don't have low salaries, not prepared, it's hard to develop. How do we prepare the teachers for the future?
So, yes, I was going to bring the teachers into the scene because you can have the best equipment. With children, you need, children and adolescents, you need good teachers. And Montserrat mentioned this very quickly. You can have the best top-notch technology. If you don't have a good teacher, it doesn't get incorporated into the classroom. And we have a challenge in many countries to attract high schoolers or upper secondary, as in Europe, in some countries you say, to the teaching career. So we need to attract talent, and this you do through 3 things. First, yes, salaries matter. Doesn't have to be the upper career as far as salaries are concerned, but you have to give good salaries. Second, you have to make it hard to get into the teaching careers. If you send a sign that everybody can study education, it's an easy university or area to get into a university, and you don't provide social value to the profession. It must be for the top students. Colombia has built some incentives on that front, but Chile had gone even further, making it, you have to have a very high grade in the national exam at the end of high school to be admitted into their teacher's college. And third, you have to have social recognition and not pity towards teachers. Unfortunately, sometimes we treat teachers as if they were somebody to be lamented. They work under such difficult conditions and not somebody who is entitled to have pride on their achievements or their practices. Second, you have to prepare them for the teaching profession in a different way than we prepare, not only in Latin America, but in Africa or even in some countries in Asia, where what we teach in university is completely disconnected from what they are going to do in their careers. When we prepare a doctor to become a doctor, since day one, they are in the hospital that is connected to that medicine school. In education, no. Sometimes it's only at the final stage of your university, of your college, that you go to a school. You have to connect to practice. And third, and not less important, in an era, at an epoch where it is so urgent to teach how to learn, teaching learning to learn, teachers should be lifelong learners. We have to teach them to have passion for learning. If they don't have it, they won't instill in the children and adolescents this love of learning that many of them, unfortunately, do not have. So we have to rethink teaching, not only preparing them on some crash courses to use technology, which is also important, but teaching them to love learning, to be passionate about their careers and passionate about learning.
And I think the way we teach must change, because the traditional way we're teaching at classes, you have lots of young, connected teenagers who are disengaged about studying.
Yeah.
And how do we engage these people again? How can we put them in the same page? And how we put adults in the same page?
Well, again, I think technology can help there, because the most routine part of the teaching is actually giving the traditional classroom lecture. Now, students can get that information from the laptop, and that would save time for teachers to concentrate on the teamwork, on the complex problem solving, on the creativity, and all those issues that are much more difficult to teach. But going back to what Claudia was saying, I mean, what we know about teachers and their skills is that one of the skills that most teachers in most countries are not very good at is complex problem solving. Because traditionally, this was not part of the training they got at university,
so complicated?
Nor has it been part of their experience in the classroom. So it's really important to prepare the next generation of teachers, but it's also very important to devise ways to upskill and reskill the teachers that entered the profession 10, 20, 30 years ago. There's still going to be teachers for a long time in most countries, and they really need to change their teaching practices, and they really need to acquire new skills. First, the skill itself, whether it's complex problem solving or critical thinking, and then the way to teach that to other people. So,
can I make a comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I woke you up. No, I just wanted to say that I think teachers are and will continue to be extremely important in the model. The most promising thing that these technologies are bringing, especially artificial intelligence, is the fact that it could truly free up the teacher from the tedious tasks. And for instance, tests and grading takes a long time. And you know, today, through artificial intelligence, you can test and grade almost 90% of what you have to test and grade. So in my view, the transformation of the teacher, number one, will be there will be a lot of great enthusiasm for technology to help doing the boring parts, important but boring, and then focus on the creation of content and experiences. So teachers will need to turn themselves into great experts on using these technologies. Virtual reality, augmented reality, all of these amazing tools that can be so immersive, so actually they spend the time on tutoring and creating great, amazing, engaging content. And that's the great thing that's happening with this technology. That said also, imagine that artificial intelligence also, real time, is building the profile of the student, live. Because these cameras are actually analyzing how the kid reacts and helps the teacher basically build a profile that actually can give 2 tips to the teacher on what to focus on just by seeing the reaction of the kid if he's understanding or not understanding. So I want to say, very important, teachers are going to be more important than ever, but their role is going to move to be free them up from the boring stuff and make them great creators of content experiences for engaging the students.
Can I build on that, please? So I believe that first, pedagogy matters a lot. So to prepare teachers for a more engaging classes. And what you mentioned about boring tasks makes a lot of sense. Now, technology can be a helper if used in the correct way. It doesn't disengage the teacher from the task of understanding each child or adolescent, each one of her pupils or students. And there is one more thing that I think we need to emphasize, including from what we heard this morning, which is about social and emotional learning. You cannot have classes on social and emotional learning done in the traditional way. Empathy. Empathy is the ability of. You have to develop those skills in the teachers themselves, because if a teacher is not empathic, she will never be convincing in preaching empathy that kids see that are not present in her. You have to really make her develop that skills. And so part of the upskilling of teachers is pedagogy, part is, yes, digital education, and part is developing social and emotional skills in the teacher to build resilience, to deal better with mistakes, to deal better with persistence. If a teacher gives up on her student, the student will give up on his or her learning. So those are important
Who
points.
should be responsible to form this new teacher we'll need for the future? The governments, or must the teachers be an autonomous learner like we all must do in the future? What do you think?
What we find is that in most countries, governments are always in charge of defining the standards and sort of other accreditation and recognition systems. So that's very important, because that signaling system tells you, say, how good someone has to be able to study education at university, or how good or what skills someone needs in order to become a teacher, right? Now, in those countries where teachers are already highly skilled, they are given a large degree of autonomy so that they can develop their own innovative practices. And this is the case of Finland, but this is the case of Singapore and many other top-performing countries. When teachers still have a very low level of skills and they're still not capable of developing their own innovative practices and creativity, then they need a lot of support through professional development. Just to give you an example of the country which has been the top performer in PISA for a long time, and it keeps improving, which is Singapore. Now, the difference between Singapore, the top performer in PISA, and the lowest performing country in PISA, I won't say which one, it's equivalent to 7 years of schooling. We're talking about huge differences in quality. Now, one of the many things that Singapore does differently? Teachers spend more time in the Academy of Teachers learning themselves new innovative teaching practices, new skills, and so on, that they spend in the classroom. Now, how many countries can afford that? Whether this is scalable, that's another question. But this has worked, and this is the way forward, even though other countries may not be able to take it to that extent.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if we can imagine the best way to educate the workers in the future, what would you say we should start?
Well, sorry, I come from technology, so I would say technology is a big way to do that. And maybe I should refer to answer that question to the challenges I see as really core to the whole of society, but for enterprises themselves. I think a lot of the competitiveness of enterprises is going to come from their ability to create differentiation in services and products, to great creation of very competitive algorithms. Basically, there's very little around that today that you train a worker for. And the reality is that if you want to transform a business, the algorithm itself is the one that creates that capability to create new products and services that are highly differentiated. So how do you train against that, number one? Number two, how do you train a set of people on how you manage the ethics of the creation of an algorithm? How do you ensure that an algorithm is actually not discriminating people? There's a series of big questions around that. So the answer today would be, yeah, technology will provide MOOCs and self-training, and many corporations do that. But truly, the biggest challenges we have in front of us is that the whole world is being transformed by these technologies that are converging. A lot of that has to do with the creation of differentiation through creation of algorithmic capability at the institutional level, and we have very little to train for on that, especially in how you manage an ethical way of creating new products that are based on algorithm capability when we just don't have that basically in the market. I don't think universities are producing that today. So the challenge is very broad in that sense, but I guess technology can help a lot too.
And how do you see, Claudia,
Well, before I talk about the workers, let me go back to your question on who is responsible for changing the way teachers are addressed in society. And I think it's both public policy, as Montserrat has mentioned, but also civil society. Governments respond very well to good civil society pressure. If we want to change things, citizens are capable in democracies to react to good pressure. So they are good at pressuring governments for change. And having good education policies is very important and even urgent. On the workers' front, one thing that I would think about is connecting more education to professional education within the companies or even outside the companies, because in this period, in this era where people would have to be reskilled and upskilled frequently, having advisory agencies on skills, governmental or civil society organizations devoted to counseling workers on skills will be very important. Not only training, but counseling. Where should I get, or in what capacity should I get reskilled, or what is the next profession that I have to look after? Will be an important point.
So when we talk about skills, you talk about collaborative skills, you have critical thinking, but we all must learn a little bit about technology, as they say. How technological must we become to face the challenges we have in the future labor market?
Well, it's an excellent question, because I think that the definition of digital skills, at least within the OECD, has changed a lot. So we used to understand digital skills by meaning that a person was able to use a device and certain software. No longer, because so many people have access to that, and it's become so user-friendly that it's really not very complicated for people who have had access for some time to learn by using, basically. So now we use a different definition of digital skills, which is how efficient people are at solving certain tasks in a digital environment. So just to give you an example, if you ask someone to perform a task with a computer, the main problem is not so much whether that person, at least in OECD countries, has experience with a computer, because most people do, both at school, at work, and at home. Whether those people are familiar with the software, because most people are, or it's really easy to learn. But how efficient are they at not getting lost in the vast amount of information that's available through the internet? So what we see is that when you ask people to perform a task in a digital environment, highly skilled people are very efficient. They will know where to look for the information. They will spend just enough time in each side to get the relevant information and move on to the next step until they get the tasks done. People with low levels of skills, the problem is that they get lost in this vast amount of very complex information. So they're not very efficient. They look in the wrong places. They spend too much time, and they can't finish the task properly. So,
yeah, there's an observation on that I think is important to think about the replacement of jobs. People tend to think this job is going to disappear or that going to. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. The reality is that many jobs, or parts of those jobs, are the ones that are going to be replaced. And in that sense, companies will need to think about that. Let me give you an example. Aviation. In the cockpit, there used to be 3 people. One was called the flight engineer. Well, there's no flight engineers anymore, right? So that's gone, and that was gone gradually. Now, automation is coming into the cockpit. And then there's a point where, it's no doubt in my mind, the airplane is going to be able to take off and land itself without trouble, and the pilot will be there just in case. So there are many questions about what do you do with that pilot sitting there? Should that pilot earn the same money now that he's just sitting there basically watching the machine doing all of that? All of these are elements that you have to think about at the time you think of reskilling, because it's not a one-to-one swap. It's going to be gradual, and certain jobs are going to be displaced halfway, and then how do you deal with the fact that maybe wages are going to be depressed because now that person is not doing all the things that that person used to do. Now a machine does part of that job, so what do you do with that? So it's a very broad, challenging thing where technology can help, but at the same time can be a big challenge for companies to rethink about the model of how you reskill people.
Okay, well, we almost finished, so unfortunately, I have one final consideration by each one of you. Of the challenges for the future, what do you expect could be the education in the future? What do you dream about?
So I think the question that most people ask is this technological revolution going to have a positive or a negative impact? And the answer, I'm afraid, is it depends. It depends on whether you prepare people by equipping them with the right skills well in advance, and then you will turn the challenge into opportunities for all. But if people are not prepared because they don't have the right skills, then the impact will be very negative.
Okay.
Well, very quickly, let me share with you then my utopia. Independently of the changes that will happen, I dream of a system where every child learns with high expectations for every one of them, which means combining excellence with equity. And also that teachers may be respected for their practice, not out of pity. And that inequality is not reinforced but through education. Unfortunately, nowadays, education systems reinforce inequality instead of fighting it. And finally, that education really prepare each student, each pupil to autonomy, the dream of Montessori, of Dewey, of Paulo Freire from Brazil.
Okay.
Technology is like a hammer. You can kill somebody, or you can build a beautiful house. And the only thing I can tell you is the following. The biggest part of the revolution coming in is the incredible capability of technology to personalize the learning experience. That's the biggest, single, most important thing that's happening, where a student can be empowered with no limits on a personalized way of learning and absorbing and discovering, and the teacher too. The side of the hammer that is very dangerous is how do you manage that personalization in terms of privacy, security? How do you not abuse ethically the fact that data is out there of that student and teacher, and you are basically not crossing that line in which you put technology in front and you basically pay by making the humans less humans or being invaded by technology. And that's the biggest dilemma we have in front of us. Let machines be machines, and let humans Be humans.
humans.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just very interesting. Thanks a lot for all the panels. Thank you all for accepting this. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Voy a hacer un post. Ha sido brillante. Ahora me saco una foto rápida. Okay, moving right along. So, this is what I love about enlightED. We get so much enlightenment here with all these amazing speakers. And now we've heard about this Revolution 4.0. But what are the skills that teachers need in the digital age? And what better representation than our next line of panelists? We have Rocío Albert López Ibor. She's the Deputy Minister of Political Education in la Comunidad de Madrid. We have Doctora Lucía del Añelo. She's the Director Presidente del Centro de Inovação de la Educación Brasileira, CIEB. We have Frederick Lindgren, who's President and CEO of Kunskapskolan. It is one of the largest free independent school programs in Sweden with over 14,000 students. Can you imagine public schools being run by private institutions? And finally, we have Alfredo Hernando Calvo. He's a psychologist, an investigator, but his most important qualification is that he's a father. But he's also the founder in 2013 of the Proyecto Escuela 21. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the skills of the future for teachers.
So thank you very much for this amazing day. I'm happy you stay here with us. We are going to have an hour to draw the line about how it's going to be the teacher training and the teacher skills in the digital age. And I have to declare myself, I'm a big fan of teachers. You know, I love teachers. I think they are the center of the change in innovation in the educational system. I'm a very big fan of the teachers of my kindergarten children, so I think I'm very fan of that. And I think one of these crazy ideas happened today when I was thinking about digital age. So I thought, what is the digital age? You know, we know every minute we have sent 188 emails per minute. Right now, all the time, we are selling this amount. We have more than 200 million pictures in Instagram every second minute, and all of this is happening also with our children. So I will, today in the morning, I asked Siri, you know, the personal assistant from the cell phone, I asked him, why do we need teachers when we got Google, Siri? And she said to me, you know, teachers, they are usually nice people. Siri said that to me, and I said, okay, that's a good answer. You know, teachers are nice professionals, are nice people, they are nice workers. And the question will be, but how do we train and which skills do we need to have with these teachers in this digital age? So I will ask the first question to you three. Which one are your three favorites, your top three skills that teachers need in this digital age? Rocío, yeah, should I start?
Okay, first of all, thanks to enlightED to invite me to participate in this wonderful program, and I will represent the region of Madrid and the education policies of Madrid. But I have to confess also that I'm a professor, so in some way I'm a teacher. And also I'm a mother, so I'm very worried about how my children will learn in this moment and in the future. So for me, it's really important, all of it. And I think that teachers are absolutely necessary, even if we have Googles, all the technologies that you can imagine, but they have to adapt to the new models and the new ways to learn to teach our students, as the competence of the students are going to change, the competence of the teacher have to change. And I think one of the most important things right now is to get them the competence to manage the knowledge of a classroom, because we know that coffee for everything is not a good thing, so you have to have in the same classroom very different people, and we have to give the teachers the tools to manage with these different people. And I think that in this sense, technologies can be very useful because you can run different levels of speed with each student. And this is a way also for getting motivation or creativity for each student. So I think it's necessary, but it's very important that a teacher couldn't be confused for so many technologies or tools, and it has to be focused in the managing of the classroom.
So you see the teachers like with technology like this strong tool to manage diversity of learning, of way of learnings, of way of rhythms, of ways of material that we can change with technology.
And I'm not thinking about equalizing everything, getting everyone whatever they need. There are people who need a lot, so you have the tools and the techniques to get the maximum of them, but also you can manage with different technological tools to get from another people who are different, another speed of learning, and I think this is very useful, and you can get the best of everybody.
Wow, very good. Yeah. Lucia, what do you think about what are your top 3 skills for teachers?
Actually, I will start by disagreeing with Siri this morning.
Okay.
Teachers are not nice people. They are professionals. And there is no other profession nowadays that you can work without using technology. Can you imagine a doctor that doesn't use technology, or a driver that cannot use Google Maps or something like that? So I think we have to reinstate this professional status of teachers, say they are the ones that are responsible for the process of educating children. Technology is not going to replace that, and it's not because they are nice, it's because they are professionals that study, that understand, that have a special look for what the teacher needs. And they should be the designers of the learning experience of each child. That's how technology comes in. Technology helps the teacher to exercise their profession in a better way, because nowadays they have tools, they have content that can tailor and personalize learning much better than they used to do when they had 40 or 50 students in the classroom. So when you ask me what are the main digital skills that teachers should have, I could think of 3 big groups. One is pedagogical practice mediated by technology. Teachers did not learn how to teach with technology when they were at university. So right now they need to understand how to incorporate this technology in their daily teaching. That's one big chunk. Personalization, formative assessment, how to do a curation of digital educational resources that are right for one child or the other. So that's one big group of digital skills. The second one is digital citizenship. There's a very interesting research done with thousands of teachers in Brazil, and teachers were asking, did students ask you about things in the internet, problems, cyberbullying, privacy issues? And almost all teachers said, yes, my students asked me about that and I didn't know what to say because I don't understand either. If they asked me if I was manipulated, for example, in political campaign by social media, I do not know as a teacher if I was or not was manipulated. So there is a set of skills of understanding the ethical implications of the use of technology that teachers need to understand, need to discuss, and need to learn how to teach this set of skills for their children. And the third one is professional development. We are all assuming that teachers know how to use technology for their professional development, that they will take online courses and they will learn new skills, but that's not true. Actually, edX, Harvard online platform, saying that most of the students that take courses in the online platform don't finish, don't ask for a degree. So we are a generation that we were not formed on using technology for our professional development. So I think when we look, there's three groups of skills that we need to address when we think about how to prepare teachers to be better professionals using technology.
Thank you, Lucia. I just came with this idea that you are in the government from a regional, from a province here in Spain. You have the perspective as a country, but you have the perspective from a group of schools. So we have the whole, the trilogy of the teacher training perspective. And how is this? How it is for you, Frederick? How are the skills that teachers need in your schools?
Well, it's a good question, and I like your structure there. I think it was very hands-on. And I was thinking, when you asked the question, maybe on a more philosophical way, and maybe it's the same skills in the digital age as before. But I think curiosity is one, to constantly look for new tools, to evaluate your own teaching, see what is effective, what type of group do you have in front of you, and of course, what new digital tools are there. So curiosity would be one of my top three. Second would be focus on relationships, or relationship-centered type of teachers, because I think there's a vast amount of research showing that creating relationships is important. And I think also as we get more digitalized, hopefully that will mean that teachers can spend more time with students and meeting all the different students more. So if you don't like relationship building, I think that will be a weakness for you as a teacher going forward, even more than today. The third one would be communication, perhaps, and it's almost the second one again. But as someone showed before, the top three is probably relationship, relationship, relationship. But of course, to communicate is important when you want to build relationships, but I also think the digital tools enables even better communication, and that will also drive more learning.
Perfect, perfect. You know, we have this perspective in Madrid, Brazil, and Sweden, and I would like to ask you if you have a vision of a beautiful teacher training model, you know, because we know there are mocks, there are blended learning, there is direct assessment in schools, there are, you know, the typical workshops or conference or events like this that they are great, and they make the networking possible between schools, business, governments, entrepreneurship. But if you have a vision about how would you like for you to be the best teacher training model for Madrid in the next years? You know, you have a dream about teacher training, how it could be.
I will say that all the models, and there is not just one model that can work, but I think the different ones like MOOCs, blended, presential, distance, whatever, they have to have clear principles. All of them can work, and it depends also of the teachers, the disponibility and the restrictions, the dispersion of geography and so on. But there are three important principles. I think that training teachers has to be connected, link learning through practice and technological tools. It is very important. It's also very important that today that technological tools are so important. You teach the teachers, the redundance, to know how to make a safe use of technology, because as we mentioned before in our conversation, today it looks like there is a controversial relation between humanities and technology, and I don't think there is this controversial relation. We have to know that technology and these kind of tools are an instrument, but the important things are the contents, the learning, and it has to be an instrument and not a tool itself. So for me, it doesn't matter the way, could be sometimes blended, could be sometimes distance, presence, whatever, but you have to have clear principle that the technical tools are instruments, that the important thing are the contents, that we have to make an updated of the didactical and scientific methods of learning, and all of them can work, but you have to know how to use it.
Them and look for the best solution for every maybe a school, district.
Yeah, because I was thinking, for example, in Spain, that it's very different, the model of Madrid, that is a region that is very concentrated geographically talking, and it's completely different in the case, for example, of a region of Castilla-León, that is a big one, and probably they have to use much more distant learning or training learning for teachers. But I don't think that the important thing will be the way, and the important thing is how to teach the use of technologies and so on to get the improving of learning the new contents and so on.
Bigger than Spain is Brazil. Brazil is a huge country, a lot of teachers, a lot of young students. So how is your vision for, to the competence for this teacher training for all the teachers you have in Brazil?
We did something very simple. We asked teachers, how do you learn about technology? And the two answers were, I learned by myself, or I learned it by a peer, a friend of mine that taught me. And we asked, how about the training that the departments of education in Brazil spends millions of dollars every year training them? I said, no, it was not useful. I said, why were not useful? They were spending a lot of money and a lot of time. And they told us, because there was no experimentation, and there was no time for me to share with my colleague what worked and what didn't work. So we had all this information. We decided to dream about how to create a place to train teachers how to use technology. And we developed this model, and this model is called effects, are spaces of experimentation for teachers and technology. And we started doing something thinking about the physical space. That's something that Stanford D School does very well. The space is very important. We usually train teachers in very traditional classrooms with the same setting that we want them to change. So we created these spaces that are very flexible, they are very colorful, they have all kinds of technology in it, even if that technology is not going to be in schools. For example, there was a huge discussion about a 3D printer. Should we have a 3D printer in the teachers' training center? And a lot of people said, no, they are not going to use that in school. But we wanted them to know what a 3D printer was, because that was important for them to feel confident in order to talk about that with their students. So we created these centers. We have 2 prototypes now working in Brazil. And the idea is that teachers get together, they experiment. There is no theory about technology. They try on, they experiment the technology, and together they create a lesson plan that they think that they can use in their schools. So they go back to their schools, they apply the lesson plan, and they come back and then discuss what worked and what didn't work. So we are creating this vision that as we are doing with children and all our students, experimenting technology is very important for teachers. It's not a theoretical concept. You have to try on, you have to create on your
So
experimentation
it's
in
more
order
like
to
a
teach.
make it movement. You have to be hand-on with technology. You have to break the 3D printer and fix it again and try again, and that's how you learn in the Center for Teachers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that all of us will agree that learning by doing is much useful than just learning in a theoretical way.
Of course.
Yeah.
It is. Yes. Fredrik, you have 36 Kunskapsskolan
Yes.
in Sweden.
Yeah.
And all the teachers, they are working under the same project. So they have the kind of the same skills. You also have new schools in India. And then you have 2 countries, same project. Teachers have to be kind of the same teacher training curricula. How do you manage all of this differentiation from countries, from districts, from different schools with different contexts?
Yeah.
How is the secret?
Well, I don't know if I know the secret, but you're absolutely right. We have the same pedagogical vision for all our schools, to make a more personalized education. So if you want to hear more about that, I will speak in the Speaker's Corner tomorrow at 10.
Of course.
But to have one clear common vision and sharing the same type of tools and processes, I think it's a great advantage, because that means that you have a clear framework. We get a common language between all the people working in our organization, which means that it's very easy to share ideas, to compare practices, to benchmark. We don't have to argue whether we should use a Chromebook or a PC. We have decided we all use one of those tools, and then we can gather around sharing, once again, good ideas around that. So that is, I think, is a good thing. But then also, as you both mentioned, I'm a big believer in collaborative learning. I think before, at least, teachers, like many other professions, were very focused on going on a university course to learn more and to get some more university points on their CV. But honestly, I don't think it really drove competence much further. I think much more we can do together in your school, between colleagues, sharing ideas, watching each other, doing evaluations together, reading interesting research together. We have a sort of central pedagogical research department that can also support schools in finding themes to work around. They can also spread interesting materials and stuff like that. So I think collaborative learning is what really creates results.
Perfect, thank you. You know, the last months, Fundación Telefónica and Alto Data Analytics, they were working in a report, you know, like measuring the conversation about education all over the world. This was 2 months all over Twitter, Instagram, what is the teachers and the common people are talking about education. And one of the surprise, it was that the conversation is a lot about the personalization. So adaptive learning, machinery learning, learning algorithms. So it's not only about teachers that are talking about how can we measure and adapt learning, it's just all the conversation around in Twitter and other social networks is about adaptation, personalization. The report is in the website from Fundación Telefónica. I think it's very interesting to have a look if you have the opportunity. But I would like to ask you, we always talk about personalization and adaptation of methodologies with students, but how do you imagine, how do you look for a way of personalize the teacher training? Because we always are thinking about the students, but we also need to think like how is the learning passport from a teacher. You know, a teacher starts with, I don't know, 20, 18, 21, 22 years old, but it's going to be 40 years in the classroom, and it's a lot of learning happening over there. So how can we develop something that is more like a living curriculum and not more like a closed and stacked paper? You know, how do you see personalization for teacher training? Freely, take the word. I don't know. Frederick.
Well, I think in many ways you can use the same tools as with the students, actually. I mean, traditionally, I think teacher training has been a lot of gathering your teachers in a room, lectures and stuff like that. In many ways, I think it still is like that. But we have actually created this online platform where we can get material, films, exercises, and different stuff around the different tools in our toolbox. That teachers, when they start at Kunskapsskolan, they will work with this together with other newly employed teachers, for example. But then they can also do this over and over again at home or on their spare time if they want to go back, learn more about certain things. So create a platform for that. We also have communities online where the math teachers, for example, you can share ideas across the nation, across different countries also. So I think you can use some of the digital tools also there.
Perfect, yeah. Rocío, you wanted to...
Probably, as we mentioned before, if we want to personalize the education of each student, taking into account their attitude and their possibilities, you also, as Frederick mentioned, you have to also personalize the training of the teachers, but you have to, in order to be very close to the different situation of the classrooms, you have to link with the real situation. You cannot train the teachers apart from reality.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because if not, even if you are not going to use a 3D printer, you have to know which is the context where they are going to work later on. So I think they have to be close, but you have to give them different tools, because then later they will use it depending on the context that they will have to teach. And it's not the same if you have a small classroom or a different socioeconomic context, and you have to give them different tools and they can adapt depending on the kind of student.
Perfect. Lucia?
I think there are two important points here. One is initial training. So colleges of education should include technology as part of their core training. They usually give one discipline or one course, but I think it should be part of the profession of being a teacher to understand learning technology and learning science. That's one point. The second thing is that what we are doing, we developed a tool to self-evaluation of teachers' competencies in technology, because we realized that some teachers were really embarrassed to say that I don't know how to teach with technology, or I don't want to expose myself and say that I know nothing. So we developed this tool. We just launched it 2 months ago, and more than 25,000 teachers have already done it. And they receive a report in their personal email saying that's where you are, these are the skills that you know how to do well, and what does it mean to your teaching? It means that you have some constraints and some limitations, but here is what you can do to improve. So teachers are taking this personalized track of self-development, and then we aggregate this data for the schools department in order for them to offer exactly the kind of training that the different groups of teachers in their department need. Because otherwise they would always offer the same course all over again without really identifying what were the needs of different groups of teachers in their department.
I really think online tools for self-assessment are one of the big things we really start to do to build something like this learning passport for teachers. You know, I can see where I am, I can see what I want to get, how can I go there? Maybe I can go to a workshop, I can take a Blender learning course, I can go to a MOOC, or I can do something online, so it's great. But you also wanted to say something, Frederick?
A good example, I think, is self-evaluation is fantastic, both for students and for teachers. I was thinking, we are actually right now trying a tool to document lesson observations. I'm sure you do that also in your schools, but now we're trying for the first time a digital lesson observation documentation application. Wow. And not so much that I don't want to control our teachers, but it's a good way to document, to visualize for them their strengths and weaknesses, but it will also allow for us as an operator of these schools to, on an aggregated level, see where do we have strengths and where do we have weaknesses, and then we can address the weaknesses from sort of a joint level.
Of course. Right. Rocío?
No, I just want to say that like 4 years ago, or even 5, we introduced in secondary schools a new subject called technology, programming, and robotics. And it was really interesting, but we cannot teach this subject to students if the teachers didn't get the proper training, because if not, they will get like technology phobia. That it was happening at the beginning. So as we realized that, we gave them a very personalized technology training, and things changed completely, and they start to love the subject and to teach the subject. So you cannot try that a student will be digital, technological persons if the teachers are not technological. So you have to give them the proper training in order to teach the competencies they will need in the future.
Yeah, but may I say something about that? Because we always say that we have to teach because students are natives, but that's not really true. Students know they they are users of technology, but they really don't understand technology. So, and I say that because it's so important. There is a study of OECD that says that self-efficacy, the teachers feeling competent, is perhaps the most important variable for them to be good teachers. And I think we are doing wrong with technology because we say, you know, your students are digital natives and you know nothing about technology. That's not true. Students are users of technology, as teachers are. We all use WhatsApp, but when you ask a student, for example, what is the algorithm of Google? What is the algorithm behind Facebook? They don't know. They don't even know the concept of algorithm. When you ask about responsibility, about cyberspace, of the legal implications, they don't know. So what we are trying to say to teachers is that technology is bringing new things, new knowledge into our lives, and we all have to learn, students and teachers. It's not that you are not competent, it's that it's really new, and we all have to learn.
I think we need to know how to watch Netflix. That is very easy, but we need to also know how the Netflix is recommending a new series to us and how does it work, because it's not the same watching that having a profile about your likes or dislikes in the same tool. Fredrik, you wanted to say something?
Maybe building on that point, I think it's also not only a question of learning how to use technology and digital tools, but also how to set borders or to learn when not to use digital tools, when we leave the mobile phones outside the classroom, or we actually might need to shut down certain websites during the school day. I think that's part also of living digital, to learn when not to use these things. And I hope we can learn much from the neuroscience around this.
What's happening with that? Yeah, we got the last 3 minutes. So what is your last 3 ideas, 1 minute per each of you? So 3 ideas, how do you close your day about the first day in enlightED? We have 2 days ago to the next 2 days, but also how do you close the day with your main 3 ideas you take from the experience we share here today?
Okay, I would like to emphasize that there is no controversial between technologies and learning. I think that technology is a way or a tool to facilitate learning, updating, and even to teach how to do a safe use of the technologies. Also, I would like to say that as soon as the students start to learn not only how to use technology, robotics or programming or whatever, I think it will be easier for them, because I think it's like a foreign language. As soon as they start, for them it's very intuitive and very easy. So I think we should start before even to start to programming or to doing robotics or whatever. I don't mean that they have to be an expert coders, but they are going to tackle with coding and so on. So they have to have, since they are very young, a little bit of this kind of technologies. Third, probably I will say that teachers are really able to learn new things, and they are very responsible if we gave them the instruments to know.
The proper tools.
The proper tools to learn. So we have to be optimistic, and I don't think it's going to be this war against learning in a traditional way or learning in a very sophisticated way or technological way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Lucia, how are your 3 tops?
I totally agree, but I think technology is not only a tool, it's also a body of knowledge that all of us need to understand. And this morning I learned a lot about technology, because I think there are algorithms that are going to dominate our life, and we need this critic stance of, this I'm going to accept and this I'm not going to accept. And I'm very optimistic about technology in education, because I think we are going to reclaim what is human about education, what cannot be replaced by any technology, no matter how advanced it is. So I think that those moments that the teacher sits with a child, that he's not filling forms or grading papers, but really talking and arguing and discussing something, we are going to have more of this precious time, which is, I think, for me, the beauty of education.
I love it.
So technology, I think, is going to help us to reclaim that.
Okay, thank you. Frederick, you started with curiosity, communication, and collaboration.
Exactly.
How do you want to end?
Points. Well, it's always nice to meet people from different parts of the world, and it makes you realize that we are facing similar challenges in education, I think. That's point number 1. Number 2 is that education is really changing, and it's important to find a way to navigate in this change, very much driven by technology. I'm also very optimistic, but it's important to navigate, to have a clear vision, I think, and then step by step moving forward, and to make sure that you really create results for the students. Third point, just a reminder once again, relationship, relationship, relationship.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think we believe in teachers, and we think enlightED is going to be a huge point for the transformation and reinventing the education with teachers. So thank you very much. And thank you all of you for being with us to the end of the day. Thank you a lot.
Okay, thank you. All right, tomorrow, make sure you're here for another amazing day of talks and speeches. And please don't forget, Fundación Santillana, la clave está en las habilidades 21. Tomorrow, the workshop at 12 o'clock in La Torre. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you.